You have a lot of flexibility when it comes to choosing brushes, but I bet as you go along, you're probably going to find a few that you can't paint without. Today I'm going to talk about 3 qualities of brushes and then demo a few brush strokes. We're not going to be doing a deep dive into techniques in this video. Next week when we talk about my 13 techniques, we're going to deep dive into how to use these brushes for specific watercolor techniques. And don't forget that I have a 1-page crash course all about brushes in my supply list that you can get at paint333.com. Let's get to it. Brush bristles can be made of synthetic material, natural hair, or a blend of the two. Synthetic brushes are usually made of nylon. They can have a harder time holding a lot of paint and water, but usually keep their shape nicely. One of my favorite brands, the Princeton Artist brushes, those are synthetic. Natural hair brushes are usually softer, can hold a lot of paint and water, but can also be fairly expensive. Obviously, those are also not vegan. Brushes that are a blend of synthetic fibers and natural hair are usually the best of both worlds. The silver black velvet brush is a blend. There are a bazillion brush shapes out there. Pretty much the only brush shapes I actually use are flat wash brushes, which are these rectangle shapes with the flat edge at the top. Grainer brushes, which are basically flat brushes that have dense bristles at the bottom and sparse bristles at the top. And then I usually use quite a few round brushes, typically size 6, but they can come in all kinds of range of sizes. The smaller the number, the smaller the brush. The bigger the number, the bigger the brush. I usually use size 6. The brush shapes that I use work really well for me as a pet portrait artist. If you paint landscapes or florals, you'll likely need other kinds of shapes of brushes. This is a wash brush, but it's also called a flat or a shader brush. You have fan brushes that look like this. Mop brushes look like this. Other popular brush shapes include angle, dagger, filbert, and rigger or liner brushes. The third and final quality is the handle. Typically, watercolor brushes have a short handle, and I think this is mostly because you're usually working smaller and up close and you don't want that big handle in your face. I also like shorter handles because they're easier for traveling. The only way I could see to actually improve this particular brand of brush is if the end of the handle came to a point. Some watercolor brushes do come to a point at the end, and this is handy for scraping. You automatically have a built-in scraping tool when your handle does that. You likely already have a few brushes lying around that will work very well for watercolor painting, but you might not have a couple key brushes that will really help you on your journey. Let's dive into my top recommendations. No matter what brand or material or shape you eventually go with, I would suggest having a brush that can come to a really nice fine point and produce a fine line. For me, that is my silver black velvet brush in a size 6, but you can go even smaller to get an even easier way to paint fine lines. You're also going to want a type of brush that will lay down big areas of water. For me, that is a flat brush. I really like the size 3/4 inch, which is what this is. I would also highly recommend a grainer brush, which is this one, to produce things like fur, feathers, and foliage. And finally, we have our round brushes. I typically paint with multiple round brushes of the same size at the same time, keeping each brush for a certain color. Mostly this just helps me paint a little bit faster because I won't have to be cleaning the brushes between colors. I would just recommend supplementing what you already have at home with a few key brushes that you might be missing from the set of brushes we just talked about. If I was starting out and I had absolutely no brushes to work with, I would buy 4 size 6 Princeton Select Artiste Series 3750 round brushes. I would buy another round brush of the same brand in a size 2 for fine lines. I would buy the Silver Black Velvet brush in a size 6. I would get a flat shader brush in 3/4 inch. And I would get a larger wash brush 1 inch or more. There are a couple other brushes that I don't regularly use, but I think they're worth a demo. This is a fan brush, and it's a very common watercolor brush. And just like a greener brush, it's great for fur and foliage. As you can see, it makes sparse lines. I still prefer the grainer brush just because that thinner profile allows me to have a little bit more control. Another common watercolor brush, especially for people who paint florals, is a mop brush. Mop brushes and dagger brushes and angle brushes can allow you to make certain shapes by harnessing the shape of the brush itself. These brushes are specially designed by Sterling Edwards. He is a primarily landscape artist. Definitely check him out. His work is amazing. And he made these brushes out of bristles. But these brushes make beautiful, 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 and very clean washes. So I'm just laying down a little bit of water with this brush, and then I come in with my paint. And I don't know what it is about the bristles, but they just create the smoothest, most beautiful washes. In the past, I've created large washes with a wash brush like this that has softer bristles. And oftentimes I would end up with some banding where basically you can kind of see the individual strokes that I made in the wash. I have not had that issue when I make a wash with one of these Sterling Edwards brushes. And his brushes, as you can see, work very well for fur or foliage. Last but not least is cleaning and storing your brushes. They do offer actual kind of brush soap. I've never found that to be necessary. I don't use it. I just dab my brushes in the dirty water and then dab them in the clean water. And then I wipe them on my rag and then leave them to dry horizontally on my rag. You want to avoid, obviously, keeping your brush in water for a very long time. Definitely don't store them in water. It will dull the bristles and it will loosen the glue. And in general, your brushes will wear out very quickly if you do that. The other thing is when brushes are wet, you don't want to store them vertically with the bristles facing upwards because the water can soak into the glues and just kind of wear your brushes out in that way. The best way is just to store them horizontally, and I find it's just easiest to do on my blotting rag that I already have ready to go. That's it for today. In tomorrow's video, I'm going to show you how I set up my workspace and demo a few fun extra watercolor supplies. Give this video a thumbs up if it helped you, and I will see you in the next video.